Perfect. So let's start. Thank you for joining. And let me quickly just introduce myself. I'm a technical project manager based in Dubai, UAE, working on large-scale digital transformation program. And today I'm going to talk about evolutionary change with flow-based approach, other words, flow-based agile, well known. And business agility is the top of the iceberg, and we'll reveal why today. There were pretty cool talks yesterday about agile leadership and how to transition and set up mental models within your organization, which I really like. So today, my main focus would be on process piece rather than people, culture, and leadership, because my colleagues have already covered and will be covering those aspects today based on the agenda that we have in the conference, as well as there is one great topic about DevOps coming later on today. So today I'll be talking about evolutionary change with team example, then I'll jump to scaling solution and business agility. So I will start with a problem that we have faced within our team when we were trying to deliver our roadmap goals related to our objectives within the company. And there was a need to switch from Atkins code to Ferrari, and actually it was pretty hard to do because there was no one-fits-all solution for us. So we decided to go with some mixed approach and see what can we leverage to get to the success based on what we have. And when we look at the various frameworks and methods, we literally divided all those together as a team, by the way, to iteration-based and flow-based agile methods and Scrum, extreme programming, DSDM. They are more iterative with time boxes, sprints, with some mandatory ceremonies, etc. And flow-based agile methods are more towards continuous delivery pipeline with flow governance focused on and on-demand cadences and meetings. So when we look at this like high-level picture without going to the details, we agreed that maybe it's time to try something else than Scrum, because team was doing Scrum, not in a good way, not in the way that it is described, like ideal Scrum for sure. It was not that, and later on we'll see why. But we agreed to experiment and try some of these flow-based approaches. And even if Lean is like many people say that Agile is derived from Lean, and then there's a lot of confusion about it. We didn't drill down to those details because we didn't need that at that time. So we took some Kanban principles and look at them first, and some Lean principles and their values to see if it is fit for purpose to, first of all, our team culture and an organization culture. And when we saw this start with what you do now, we really like that. And we said, okay, let's start with what we do now and try to improve. And this was one of the change management principles within the Kanban. And it doesn't matter if it would be in Lean, if it would be in Scrum or somewhere else, we would pick it up. So then we drilled down to some Kanban practices and looked at them thoroughly, particularly to visualization, limiting work in progress, managing flow, making process policies explicit, implementing feedback loops, and evolving experimentally. And we saw that there is no harm if we take all of this and apply to our existing, not so well working Scrum. And again, when I say not so well working Scrum, I mean the problems were on our side, not on the framework itself. So we started our transformation, and the first question was like, how do we get to Ferrari? And there were many answers. But first of all, because the first practice in Kanban was about visualization, we said, let's go and look at our board to see what's going on there. Are we even close to be Ferrari? And when we looked at the board, we saw that we have 74 tickets work in progress, including subtasks, and we had only 11 team members in one of our engineering teams. And this was shocking, like how come 11 people are working on 74 work items? Seems like some items are zombie tickets there, some of them are blocked, and there are issues in the flow. So we all agreed that there is too much work in progress. And the next thing that we should agree on was what to do with it. What action shall we take here? And there are many actions that we could probably apply here, such as stop pulling new tickets to the process, stop starting, start finishing, and clean the board so that we can start from scratch. Improve technical aspects such as branching model, continuous integration, and delivery to smoothen the flow. Identify slowest process stage, let's say development in our delivery pipeline, and focus on improving it solely. Or analyze current blockers and dependencies and group based on cause impact area. So at the moment, we chose the stop pulling new work, and it was tough because when you do something like this, you need to negotiate with all relevant parties, dependent teams, your customers, because they are waiting for their deliverables that are already WIP, and also the ones that have been delayed and not pulled to the system. It was tough, but we managed to convince management for leadership for this experiment to start, and we talked with each individual customer or dependent team about this, that we are going to stop pulling anything new, and our focus would be on cleaning our board and WIP. And this exercise was time boxed for 2 weeks, and we started. Day 7, we have WIP 51 tickets and team members 12. We had a new team member who joined our team, and it's improving. And again, during these 7 days, every single day, everyone's focus on the team was to get things done and to resolve impediments. So we were working as a team to clean up our board and reduce work in progress. And later on, when this 2 weeks time period completed, time box completed, and we managed to reduce number around 40 tickets, it was somehow manageable. Because out of these 40 tickets, like around 25 to 30 were subtasks, not like user stories. And it was somehow manageable, and we felt the relief from overburdening. And in day 21, when we had WIP 32, we started incorporating the concept of removing subtasks, because these subtasks were creating a noise for us, and we could not concentrate on a larger items such as story, which is a true end value for the customer and our dependent teams. So we just added a filter to hide them, not completely delete, because teams were working with those subtasks to see the real picture and the real WIP. And the next thing that we did was to look at the WIP run chart together. We sit down as a team and we look at the WIP run chart, where we were with 74 WIP tickets, which is this area, and where we are now having around 20 tickets. At that particular moment, we didn't have all this picture right after this, but we had this particular dot scheme that was showing that we have reduced our WIP. So WIP visualization really helped us to understand what we have achieved during this 2 weeks experiment cycle. And the next was the reflection mechanism. So there was a simple question asked during our flow review data-driven retrospective. We're reducing the number of work items on our board. Is it good, bad? Do we feel relief from overburdening? Does our board look better? For board, yes, everyone voted yes, it looks better. We can see who is working on what is blocked, etc. But we're not feeling so much relief from overburdening. Again, we have this stress of delivery, due dates, etc., etc. So our next step here was to limit work in progress. Again, we have done some triage and clean up our board to prepare for, let's say, flow transformation here. But our next step, so it went towards visualization. But our next step here was to limit this WIP so that not to get to the same situation as we had with 74 tickets. And it was tough. Why? Just because when you talk with engineers, and I have been an engineer also, and I know this pretty well, there is a pushback or resistance. And the resistance is well understood. People don't think that limiting work in progress will help them relieve from overburdening. And what we did, we deep dived together to the science behind this and why we should limit work in progress at all. And when we drilled down to the science behind this, we saw visually how it impacts project delivery in terms of multitasking, in terms of context switching penalties, meetings, and many more. And simply just, if you start doing two things in parallel instead of one, you are increasing duration of both. This is well known. And when we did this together as a team, we understood that this is correct, and we need to find a way, proper way, to limit our work in progress. And our first discussion was about, like, what if we add this column WIP limits from Kanban and get it, like, for each column have a separate WIP. I would say almost all of us disagree with this kind of limiting work in progress, and instead we agree to implement ConWIP, which stands for constant WIP limit. Again, this is more mature practice if we compare with, if you compare with column level WIP limits, because column level WIP limits sometimes hide constraint within the system. And what we did, we just added the con WIP limit 11. So we had 12 team members. We set it 11, less than team members, number of the team people working on our project. And it was from the dev in progress till QA approved or waiting for production or deployment stage, whatever you see in your process. And we started measuring the cycle time for each of these stages. As you can see on the bottom of the screen, we have cycle time, and the constraint process stage here is development, like 3 days. And in many engineering processes like IT, service delivery, software development is mainly constraint process. Constraint means process within your stage that is taking much time, longer than others in this particular scheme. Then we started looking at the WIP run chart, which is another flow metric showing heartbeat of our delivery. In other words, are we really keeping this WIP constant? Are we keeping the high tops control level in limit? And are there any problems within our flow? associated with number of tickets that we have in our flow. And when we look at this chart, we saw that it's bumping from 2.4 till 16. And at that time, it was normal for us and acceptable because we were expecting turbulence in our flow, in our system, just because we are not ideal, and it cannot be ideal. We are not doing machinery work, or we are not in car production system or somewhere else. So the next thing that we have implemented was managing flow. And we started with triage discipline and demand management. So what does managed flow mean? If we look at this guy, he's acting as a traffic cop. He's a traffic cop actually, but he is routing, right? And when we look at the image on the right side, we can see the traffic. And this traffic, if we try to map it to our Jira boards or any boards within our project, then we can clearly see that there is a correlation, and we need to manage this traffic somehow. And nowadays, many project managers, flow managers, Scrum Masters, they are acting as traffic cops. And being a traffic cop, assigning work to team members and pushing it to the system is not what we call managed flow. And we sit together and agree with the team that this is not what we are going to do. And instead, what we are going to do is routing, defining traffic policies, and load balancing. Particularly, we should agree what kind of work item types should flow within our board system. We should limit number of these work items based on our capacity allocation. And we need to have class of service to treat them properly, particularly if we have expedite work items, like you see on the image on the left side. We need to treat it separately than the standard work item, or than the fixed date work item that should be delivered on a fixed date. Otherwise, cost of the delay is equal to the value that is attached to that particular work item. Other words, you won't wait for it. If it's fixed date, you lose it right away if you don't deliver the same date. This is just example, and also limiting the speed here means that we limit flow in terms of the work item numbers, etc. So what we did in practice, because in many conferences and in many talks, when I join and listen to the people, they talk about theory and they don't talk about practices. They don't provide real practices, and I really don't like it, to be honest. That's why today I'll talk about both theoretical and practical parts, and we'll focus more on the practical part. So we set up our triage dashboard, which was such kind of a flow governance mechanism and demand shaping mechanism, because we were a team and we were getting requests from more than 20 teams, stakeholders, etc. And we should have had a mechanism to properly triage and manage this demand. And our live dashboard in Jira helped us a lot. We started looking at this dashboard every single day before starting our work, stand-ups, whatever you have in your process. And first of all, we were doing our triage and demand shaping before starting our work. So in terms of the flow terms, I would like us to get a common ground on flow terms, because there are many. There's lead time, cycle time, flow time, queue time, delivery time, and many other times. And there can be confusion. So in terms of idea to validated product flow time decomposition, we will focus now on a flow time that is when we commit to start the work and the time when we finish the work. and give it for validation. So it won't count the delivery time, queue time in front of it, and acceptance time before that. So this is called in Kanban a system lead time, the flow time that I have just explained as. And system lead time starts from where you start your work. It can be dev ready or dev active, dev in progress, depends on your system. And it ends when you have unbounded queue such as UAT or some queue that is not controlled by WIP limit, or somewhere that you don't have control. So it's going out of your team control. And there's also one metric which is called customer lead time, which actually includes delivery time. Other words, all unbounded queues such as UAT, deployment ready, or whatever you have integration, till done status, which means in production. So what we did, we were more interested in customer lead time rather than system lead time. We look at our customer lead time to see how long things take on average in our pipeline. And what we saw, here's our real chart from Actionable Agile analytics tool. We have here like 85% probability of 49 calendar days. So our one user story was taking 49 calendar days. It's not ideal. It's not even near to be ideal, because if we look at the rule of thumb and basic understanding in Agile, you should not have any story taking more than 2 weeks, right? Stories should be the smallest granular chunk within your work breakdown structure, whatever you have. So this was a problem. And again, even if we reduce the WIP, it helped us to reduce the customer lead time. But when we looked at what was the lead time before incorporating limiting work in progress practice and visualization, triage mechanism, and what it was after, it was shocking for us. Because again, we have reduced it to 13 calendar days for 85% probability, and for 50% probability, which is meaning that in this case is 7 days, 7 calendar days. So when we looked at these two charts and compared in terms of the timeline, we started with 49 and we have 13. We didn't believe this, that we can, by visualizing, triaging our work and limiting work in progress, we can affect customer lead time in such manner. And it was a great achievement within the team. And when we visualized it, when we talked about it in our flow review session, it gave motivation for team members to bring more value, to talk about more suggestions, implement new experiments, etc., etc. Why? Because when you reduce your customer lead time, not system lead time, but customer lead time, you are getting closer to get more trust from your customers, because whatever you are promising, you are delivering on time. So later on, for sure, I revealed for the team the Little's Law and why we have this situation and why reducing work in progress led to having the system lead time, customer lead time reduced. And I also talked about probability distributions, like what is the difference between lead time distribution if you have like Pareto distribution compared to Gaussian or super exponential. I don't want to go to these details, but right now in this forum, but I explain about this Little's Law after implementation, not before. And it was like, wow, really, there is a equation, or there is a scientific explanation why we had this. And again, to be honest, this is about averages. So Little's Law work only for averages, and there are many vals and specific details that you need to take into consideration when using it for forecasting. So the next thing that we did, we borrowed drum buffer rope scheduling from manufacturing, and I'm pretty sure everyone is aware about drum buffer rope scheduling mechanism in their head, but they don't, maybe they didn't hear about this in terms of the name, how we call it DBR. But in reality, this is just a simple replenishment mechanism where you go into a supermarket and you take something, someone comes and refills it, right? And the time and the frequency of refilling this something, let's say a package of tea or whatever you took, is monitored, controlled, and set and changed based on DBR scheme or drum buffer rope scheduling mechanism. So let me give you a practical explanation of DBR in our context. So as you remember, we had this cone whip, and what we did, we increased it to 15, having 12 team members. Why? Just because we also included under this cone whip our waiting for dev queue. So previously it was starting from dev in progress. So now our whip is starting from waiting for dev. Why? Just because we wanted to manage constraint explicitly. And the constraint in our process, entire team delivery life cycle, was development. Like in any other, in many, not any other, but in many, like 80% of the time is development, because it's taking time, more time than QA and deployment and UATs, etc. In your context, it might be QA or UAT, doesn't matter. In my context, based on the time it takes, total 4 days, 1 day on average. All these numbers are averages, okay, from our system. So 1 day for waiting and 3 days for development in progress, total 4 days. And the rest, as you can see, total 2 days, total 1 day, so it's less. Now we can clearly see that in this development process, we have waiting and dev in progress. And this waiting column is limited and is under our control. And the limit here, as you can see, is minimum limit, not maximum limit. And this minimum limit is the way we started DBR scheduling, because in Jira there is no other capability, unfortunately. In other products, you might find this capability. So we said that if development is our constraint process, we need to make sure we have enough tickets in waiting for dev at every moment when developers want to pull ticket from waiting for dev to dev in progress. And the mechanism to ensure is to have minimum number of tickets in this column based on the arrival rate of the dev in progress and departure rate of the dev in progress column. Otherwise, how long does it take and how many we should keep here to make sure we have just-in-time replenishment. And the next step was we agreed that we will replenish this queue only just in time. We won't have any special meetings, grooming sessions, or whatever. We will move tickets from backlog to waiting for dev only when there is a signal. And the signal is when the ticket is moved from waiting for dev to dev in progress. This is the signal. For sure, there are later on, we have incorporated more advanced DBR mechanisms, such as when ticket from waiting for dev is moved to dev in process, there was a signal going to the upstream of our process, not in backlog, like to the design team saying, guys, please start your work, so that you get it to our backlog, dev backlog, when we need it, just in time. So this was day 16. So as you can see, we are progressing day by day. Finally, we started incorporating process policies, other words, not incorporating, but visualizing those and making those explicit. such as our ways of working and flow governance. We have created our Confluence page where we explained our Convip and agreements in terms of when to pull tickets and how to pull them, etc., the ways of working. And also we have created our delivery governance dashboard, which was to assure that we are following our process policies and ways of working. That was our agreement. And this live dashboard was showing us every single day, are we following our process policies? Are we on time? Do we have any delayed tickets, aging tickets, blocked tickets, etc.? So this was giving us a context to talk about various things, such as an example, right? If you have a delayed ticket, right, that is overdue based on the committed date, you need to take an action for this. And the action is described here as a process policy. For sure, it's not for everything. It's just a global ways of working. And you cannot apply the same for every overdue ticket. But at least you can do A, B, and C to get focus on this delayed ticket and get it done soon, such as team swarming or getting someone else, subject matter expert on the field involved, etc., etc. It can be almost anything. But you need to have live visualization of your delivery in order to see if you are following your process policies, first of all, and to course correct based on the information that you have, live information that you have. So the next thing was implementing feedback loops. And here we introduced on-demand cadences. In Scrum and other frameworks, there are fixed cadences such as sprint planning, daily stand-up, sprint review, retrospective, grooming, etc. But in our context, there was no specific cadence, but we actually set these cadences and we followed these cadences based on the need, our team needs. First of all, everyone needs a daily stand-up, so we were doing our stand-ups, and it doesn't matter which way we were doing. We were looking on the board, we were looking on the triage dashboard, doesn't matter. We had weekly demo of completed work to design authority and our client every Sunday. This was proposed by the team, not by the management, not by the Scrum Master, not by someone else. Weekly release to production every Monday. And monthly review, data-driven retrospective. These were our cadences. Again, release to production is not a cadence in Agile world, but in our case, it was a cadence. Why? Just because after each release, we were getting together, opening the browser in production for sure, and looking how it works and what we have done. So it was such kind of internal team review session. Again, it was not the same as demo of completed work item to the client or external parties. So improve collaboratively and evolve experimentally. This was the last practice. And we have done many experiments in our workflow during this transformation period. And one of those was technical improvements in terms of branching model and continuous integration delivery. We had pretty complex enterprise system. And in this enterprise large-scale solution, it was pretty hard to incorporate something that is going outside of the defined standards. And we did it. We set up our own branching model for our team, as well as the deployment model, which gave us opportunity to do continuous delivery and deployment, which gave us opportunity to incorporate all great DevOps practices and wrap it up within a pipeline where you have your automated tests run, etc., etc. I don't want to talk about this topic. My colleague will talk about it, I'm sure, later on today. So this was one of the experiments that we did, but the outcome was that we switched from weekly releases to continuous delivery model, deployment model, which is more agile for sure. The next step was upstream Kanban. So again, we sorted our problems in our downstream delivery or development, testing, QAT deployment processes. Now we look forward to the upstream. Like, okay, we are getting some features, they are being analyzed, decomposed, designed, etc., and then we are implementing those. We are getting pulled to random meetings organized by designers, etc. But there is no mechanism, there is no structure, there is no flow there. We cannot easily open and see from the upstream who is working on what. So that's why we agreed to set up an upstream Kanban board and visualize all this work and start applying everything that we did for downstream to the upstream as well. So again, if you look from the funnel perspective in upstream, you have options, and these options go through selection, filtering, and sequencing. Other words, prioritization, vague word. I'll talk about it later, but and getting ready options to your team where you can start your work within the funnel. And upstream is more for acquiring options rather than delivering options, if we compare. So act of leadership was upstream visualization flow management. And this act of leadership came again from the team, not by manager, not from manager, not from Scrum Master, but from design lead. So here is the end-to-end flow visualization, including upstream analysis and design piece. So we added this extra piece, let's say, in our workflow, such as to do, ready for design, design progress, design QA, and publish. Again, this is just example from our team. In your case, it can be something else. And we had our downstream with dev, QA, and deployment processes. Again, our team was doing some complex work, and we have incorporated this chunk. As you can see, this is also part of the downstream, but it goes right after production deployment. So you deploy to production your feature story, and you start doing this work as well. So this is like downstream of the downstream, but that doesn't matter. So let me just change this one, sorry. There was an option to keep only my video right here, but I can't see it. Right. Okay, maybe this one, that's fine. So next thing was the upstream board. So we have visualized all this in our board, heading ready for design, in progress, in review, etc. And we started applying the same concept here. And end of this transformation was like day 118 around this. Throughput increased by 280% without adding new people to the team. Other words, without adding extra money to the pipeline. And as you can see, our progress from July till November in terms of the throughput, we had around 72 or 3, and we increased it to 170. And also we have here visualization of the technical debt. And as you can see, we managed to address also technical debt, and we didn't just park whatever we deemed not reasonable to start. So we allocated proper capacity to deal with technical debt to avoid any technical issues for future. So our surprise was when we look at this and introduce this model to other teams and other members within our organization, that we were agile in our own ship, and this was somewhere here, and there are way many teams, way many processes that should have more agility, in their work. And our endeavor here in experiment and the productivity increase will not have much impact on the organization. So this was a problem, and I really like this picture from Flight Levels Academy from Klaus Leopold. If you know, he has a great book about flow visualization, flight levels. And the next step is for sure scaling solutions. And as a next step, we need to talk about scaling solutions, because team level improvements in large enterprise will be just 1% improvement from 100 or maybe less. So let's talk about scaling solutions. What does photography and flow have in common? Now we will go deep to the scaling solutions and drive from team level to enterprise portfolio level. And again, I really like photography, and here I brought an example. Like, you have different lenses for your shooting, and each lens is serving a purpose. And if you look at this with this 22mm lens, it gives you this image. So it gives you wide angle, and it gives you more information or more scene. In this case, in terms of the mid angle of view, you have some crop and you see the sun, and you see some zoom here. And for 200 millimeters, you see this tower that you can't even notice here. So if we try to map photography with flow management on an enterprise level, then there are many commonalities. And here's the example. So our lovely startups with blur background and sharp foreground, because they are not doing this yearly plannings, and they don't have the OKRs or whatever. Some of them have, for sure. I'm not talking about all startups, but their focus is like to our foreground or near future, like 3 months, 6 months max. And they are doing a really great job. And as you can see in this image, the focus is on the foreground and the background is blue. So another example of our lovely enterprises with sharp background instead and blue foreground. And why we have this situation? Because in large scale enterprises, sometimes it's not clear what low level is working on. In other words, on the team level, project, even program level, they are more interested on the strategic initiatives and their outcomes, and they don't pay attention to this. And this happens when you don't have linking between your strategy and execution. And finally, is it possible to have everything in focus, such as your foreground, midground, and background? Let's say you have the best lens in the world. It won't help you unless you do some focus stacking. In photography, this is called focus stacking. When you do actually 3 shots for a single picture, one is focused on the foreground, one is focused on the mid range, and another one on the background. And when you do it, you go to the post-processing tools such as Photoshop, and you just stack them. And when you do this stacking, you get this picture where you have clear and concise foreground, midground, and the background. And this is where our lovely enterprises and startups have their flow management, enabled flow management, and link their strategy with the execution. And now we will go to example of this in real life, how we can do it. So first of all, you need to define your work topology in your initiatives. like projects, product, service, customer journey, you can name it, whatever you want based on your topology in your organization. But the idea is that I've added here roughly the sizing parameters so that you can comprehend this image more easily, such as you have an initiative that is less than a year, decomposed to your epics, less than 3 months, features 2 to 6 weeks, user stories less than 2 weeks. And as you can see, out of one initiative, you have a bunch of user stories. And this is just visualization of one initiative decomposed to epics and one epic decomposed to features and user stories. Again, when you do this, it is in my head, visualization of this is divergence and convergence in terms of preparation and execution. And if you look at this diamond from the double diamond technique, I just borrowed one diamond. We have this work breakdown, and then what we do starting our execution, we implement our stories and get small chunks delivered to the customers, then integrating our features, delivering them, then epics, and finally entire initiative is delivered. So when we get to this initiative, and when we say this initiative is delivered, actually, we don't need to do anything. The idea behind it is that you need to have delivery mechanism, I would say continuous delivery deployment if possible, to start delivering from the lowest possible work topology element. In our case, it's user story. For sure, keeping a business end user value in place. You don't need to deliver one API or only front end or only back end. You need to have vertical slice that is usable. And here is the picture that you need to strive towards when you are talking about work topology. In your particular organization, this might vary for sure. You might have only epics, or you might have only features, or only like epic story because of the scale and size of your organization and enterprise. But I have tried to give an example that is large enough to cover enterprise level, and also has elements to help startups to do the same for their 2-layer topology or 3-layer topology. So we need to strive towards domino effect here. Even in some cases, domino effect is treated as a bad thing. In our case, it's a good thing. Because when you complete your story, you get your features completed. When your features completed, you get your epic, etc. So it is a triggering system creating a chain reaction. And one thing that you can do here to improve overall flow is automate this workflow. And let me give you here a simulation of the same so that we have more visualization of how we can automate the domino effect in our projects and initiatives, as well as visualize those. So here's an example of one initiative, let's say decomposed to our epics, having their definition, delivery phases, demo and done with analysis, design, decomposition, implementation, integration. Our features having somewhat similar without design, in this case, analysis, decomposition, next dev, test, integration, and our story level with waiting in progress, etc., with some WIP limits here. So if we run a simulation here, why I've prepared this to show you how all this works in real life, because when I was designing this for my programs, portfolios, organization, it was tough to find relevant content to do it properly. So I've decided to prepare some simulation for this one. So let's do it together. Let's look at this epic, which was selected. By the way, selected means prioritized to start next. And let's see how it goes. It goes to analysis, design, decomposition, and decomposition, it's getting decomposed to features. and features are being prioritized and selected. Now you might say, are you prioritizing epics, features, and stories on different way? The answer is yes. Prioritization is a vague term, and I'll talk about it why it's vague, and I'll decompose it to the elements, and I'll talk about flow-based prioritization later on. So next, these features are moving through your pipeline and getting to decomposition. They are being decomposed to user stories. User stories move to waiting for development, which is actually a selected column in this context. And here is what you can do and you need to do. When these user stories move to in progress, this orange color highlights the in progress state. Your feature should be automatically moved to next column, or whatever column you have there, or maybe you have dev or whatever you have. And the same applies for your epic, because if one of the features within your epic has been started, then your epic goes to implementation phase. And then when one of the stories goes to in progress, you automatically move your feature to dev, and your epic stays in implementation. And so on and so forth. So user stories are moved, and when all user stories within your feature are moved to test, your feature automatically moves to test, and so on and so forth. Finally, when it gets done, your feature moves to integration. If you have any kind of integration, because feature delivery might involve multiple teams doing multiple stories or various type of stories, technical ones, etc. And at the end, you might have integration point. In your case, this might not be applicable, so you can remove it. And finally, it goes to demo, to the client, and done. So one thing I would like to mention here is that for each flow level, we have a demo, and this is crucial. Okay, perfect. So let me proceed from here. Okay, yeah, regarding the demo, again, why we have this demo here for each flow level, because it matters. And it matters in terms of you might get feedback, and you need to get feedback as early as possible. And this is one of the cornerstones in Agile. And when people say we are Agile, it means they have capability to take feedback as early as possible to fine-tune their delivery. That's why we have it. Plus, in this particular example, as you can see, stories are going through deployment and done. And we don't have the same for features and epics like deployment. We don't have this column. And the reason for that is we have continuous delivery and deployment set up on a story level, which means using technical practices such as launch darkly and others, we are deploying user stories to production when they are ready and tested. We don't wait. And then we gradually make them visible to our customers. Again, this is in our context, in your context. For example, these stories, even if you deploy them to production, might be enablers for other teams, or they might not be end result. There can be many cases. But in this situation, for this simulation, this is the case. And the reason that we don't have deployment for a feature and epic level is because we already, when we deploy all these stories, epic gets done, and the only thing that we need to do is integration, and we do the thing there, and the same applies for epics. So we don't need separate deployments for features, epics, etc. It's just work breakdown structure and work topology here in this example. So, okay, let's move on. And finally, when all your features are done, your epic goes to integration, demo, and done. Again, in this particular situation, you might have, and you will definitely have, I haven't visualized it in sake of the time, feedback. And feedback should be reflected as a new ticket. It can be feature, user story, epic, etc. That's why it's crucial to have proper demand shaping and triage mechanism in place, so that you know exactly what kind of feedback, how to capture that feedback in your delivery system. Is it an epic, feature, story, etc., and the details of why. So let me move on here and go a bit up. So we were on initiative level here, one initiative decomposed to epics, but let's take a look also at initiative level and strategy piece, which I really like. So in terms of initiatives, here's the board highlighting all your initiatives. So this board altogether is portfolio level. It's enterprise level, highlighting all your initiatives, projects, programs, whatever you call. So this is the portfolio level. And on the first layer or the board, you can see objective and key results, OKRs, on your company level. For sure, you might be implementing other techniques to work with your strategic outcomes. This is just an example of well-known OKRs. And I will not talk about OKRs for sure, but I'll talk about the visualization of OKRs and how they can be actually depicted on the boards. So as you can see, we have input selected, and then for each OKR, we have the objective section and key results section. And as you can see, for this objective A, we have decomposed it to 3 key results. And we have also objective B, which is also decomposed. I haven't visualized it here. And the main aspect here is the % complete here that you can see just live information whenever you want and whenever you need as a C-level person, where you are as a company in terms of executing your objectives. And you can see it by % complete visualization as part of key results as well as overall, because these % completes roll up to this % complete, and this % complete is coming from % complete from your individual initiatives. So all this is interlinked. And as you can see also, there is 0 to 100 progress bar, which means literally by the position of the card, you can easily see, is it near to completion or no. Again, I will not talk about OKRs, but I really love them. For sure, you might have OKRs based on different departments, etc., etc. But here is overall visualization of the entire flow on the enterprise level. And if I connect this all together from objective level to user stories, I'm sure you might have also subtasks, etc., but I haven't visualized them. We have the flow governance here. And for each level, we need to identify relevant KPIs, metrics to track, and they should be ideally flow-based. So let me explain why, because again, you're not measuring user stories in the same way like objectives, right? This is common. And that's why we have these layers, and that's why we have various metrics per layer. And an example can be here: throughput rate, average flow time, WIP run chart, block delayed aging work for your user stories. And the same can be applied for your features and epics. Because this is more of a work breakdown structure based on the size of the delivery. But things start changing on initiative level, where you focus more on the cost of delay, flow time distribution or lead time distribution, resource liquidity required to get stuff done, and block delayed aging work always should be in place. And finally, when you go to strategic level, you have overall score and percentage complete per objectives. You have RAG status of your objectives, progress per business unit and department, key results with most progress, with least progress, CAPEX, OPEX ratio, financial liquidity, and many more. I don't want to go deep to these details, but the idea is I want to give an idea that for each flow level, you should have your own metrics based on your work item types flowing within each of your flow levels. And let me move next, business agility. So we have covered a bit, let's say, about scaling solutions using flow-based approach. Let's talk about business agility. So nothing is less productive than to make more efficient what should not be done at all. I really like this quote from Peter Drucker and how it was reflected in an Agile manifesto in terms of simplicity, art of maximizing work not done is essential. And I really like all this stuff, because this is what drives successful businesses. And in order to have the capability to say no to something, you need to understand what is priority or prioritization in your context. For me, it's a context-based thing, and it's not singular. You cannot say priority, just critical, high, medium, and low, and go with it along in large-scale enterprise. For sure, if you have just one flow level, you can use it. But for me, there are few questions that you can ask in terms of the priority. Is it filtering? Is it selecting or what to choose? Is it sequencing order of thing? Is it scheduling when to start? Is it class of service? Is it all above? What is priority? And again, there is a great talk about all this from David J. Anderson, one of the Kanban pioneers, talking about prioritization. And for now, I will focus on the context. So again, context and size matters when we are prioritizing things. And I really like this visualization from Mindful Ambition. These guys are doing a great job visualizing stuff that no one is doing. So you have big rocks. So this is rock, pebbles, and sand, right? Maybe you've heard about it, maybe not. But you have big rocks, you have gravel, sand, and you need to prioritize. If you start with the sand, you will not have a place in your jar to put rocks. If you start with gravel or pebbles, again, the same situation. So you first need to put in your jar the big rocks, then the mid-size, and then the sand. And for sure, there is always room for coffee with a friend, which I really like. That's why I like this visualization. So what does this picture inform us? It informs that prioritization is multi-vector and for sure not a singular value. So if you Google prioritization methods or frameworks, you will see so many of them. There are really, really huge number of models from Kano, VSGF, Moscow, triage tables, anything. And you need to choose. So how to choose? First thing, start with filtering and start with where you are now. And here you can use Snowden's complexity, Dave's complexity Kinefin framework, and it will give you quickly an answer, right? Do you need quantitative methods, or do you need more qualitative methods, or maybe you don't need any prioritization example? So in this example, it's obvious that for obvious environments, you don't need it at all. You don't need this quantitative, qualitative methods. You can just do 1, 2, 3 and get it done. For chaotic environment, you cannot use quantitative analysis because you will not have relevant data to apply to it. That's why you need to use more qualitative frameworks or methods. In terms of complicated environments, this is most suitable for quantitative ones. So if you are more scientific and you want to apply scientific approach, then it's for complicated. For complex environment, most suitable is qualitative or hybrid approach. So again, this is narrowing down your focus in terms of choosing one of these guys. What else you can do is look at your flow levels, and for each flow level, define a proper prioritization method, or I would say not a method, but custom prioritization scheme based on the criteria that is relevant for your level. So let's look at the initiative level, because again, we don't need to prioritize here OKRs on a strategic level. Prioritization of OKRs. OKR is a priority in some context, but I will skip this part because it's about strategy and I don't want to focus on it right now. So in terms of initiatives, projects, products, customer journeys, whatever, services, let's focus on this. So let's say you have hundreds of projects in this large enterprise coming to your way, and you already have like thousands in your backlog, let's say, and you don't know how to prioritize them or how to sequence them, select them, etc. First thing should be filtering, again, with the same method. And filtering will help you to choose top 3 or 5 initiatives based on your capacity in terms of how many you can have in progress, okay? In this example, let's say top 6. And in order to choose this top 6, you can define your custom prioritization schema with minimal viable audience, like from leadership, marketing, sales, customer service. Everyone should be involved here. I mean, you need to have representatives because this is initiative level. This is not story level. And here I've highlighted some key prioritization criteria that can be part of these caveat charts. So caveat charts, if I'm not wrong, are being used in lean Kanban and lean Kanban approaches. So you can read about enterprise services level planning from the Kanban and flow gambit from the lean about the caveat chart. Okay, so we have urgency, OKR alignment level. Other words, how well is particular initiative aligned with one or more OKRs that we have upstream. Resource liquidity or the skills required, technical risks, time to market, cost of delay, legal, throughput, user value, business value, market opportunity. There are so many. So you need to see and choose as a team with your leadership, marketing, sales representatives and form this spider chart. And when you form it, let's say we have chosen OKR alignment, time to market, cost of delay, user value, business value, and technical risk. You just add your values and you form the shape from high to low. And again, this is not quantitative. This is more qualitative, okay? Because you don't have numbers here. You have people talking about what should be next priority. And the reason for this is because when you start your initiative and move it to definition, when you need to start your initiative and move to selected, here is the prioritization, right? You need to choose from 1 million. This is your backlog, the one that you need to select. You don't have enough information to do quantitative analysis. You don't have number of epics, features, and user stories under this initiative. And you will have it only when the definition is complete, but you need to know what to start next. That's why this filtering and caveat charts as a qualitative filtering option helps you. And when you define this shape, what you do is you define a filter threshold. In other words, you say from 1,000 initiatives that we have in our backlog, please give me the ones that are at least with medium technical risk, business value, user value, blah, blah, blah. And you just click filter, apologize. Like in Google, when you search something, right? You are getting 3,000 results, when, for example, searching images. But when you choose, when you filter by types such as size, large image, type of the image, PNG, etc., it comes down to 10 or 20 manageable chunk that you can really select afterwards. So using this threshold, you can select your top 3, let's say, or top 6, doesn't matter. And when you select this, you can sequence them. So first thing is filtering from 1,000 to a reasonable number, 3, 5, 10. and then selecting and sequencing using the values, actual values that you have drawn on these charts. Okay, and here it's not obvious which one should go first, right? Because you have various perspectives. Maybe one of your stakeholders will say that this is critical because it has high business value, money for the business, and I don't care about technical risk or OKR alignment. But again, this gives opportunity for people to sit and talk and agree on what should be next. And this is more quantitative than any other quantitative techniques on this level, based on my experience. So what's next? Next, if you have done your selecting and sequencing, you can jump to scheduling. And in order to schedule something, I highly recommend to use this new trash tables coming from Lincoln University because it takes into consideration value acquisition lifecycle, shelf life ratio, lead time distribution, start date, and custom expectation. So it just combines all this together and gives you a class of service or how initiative should be treated once work is started on it. And I like it because it gives you robust selection, sequencing and scheduling solution. Again, for this particular context, we are using it for scheduling because we have used caveat charts for selecting, sequencing, and threshold for filtering. For sure, you can use many other techniques for this. Let's move on. So prioritization is multi-vector, and we saw why, especially if you have decoupled demand, delivery, continuous delivery based on work item topology. So let me explain this or open the brackets, okay? If you have story level or feature level continuous delivery or deployment, and you don't need to wait for all stories within a feature to be done so that to deploy it to production and get valuable feedback from your end users, or wait for all features within the epic to be done to move to epic to done, then you have opportunity to prioritize per each level, flow level, and you need to do it. Why? Just because when you deliver your first few user stories, you will get more user stories, and those user stories should be prioritized not by using caveat charts, because you don't need this for story level. You can use Moscow technique with just must have, should have, could have, and rely it to the feature that you are delivering with asking a simple question like from product owners, product managers. Is this a must have new discovery for this feature to be done? Yes, no, that's all, quick. And again, the same applies for other levels. And I've tried to map for you for this particular example, prioritization methods or schemes that can be ideal. So caveat charts and trash tables on initiative level, weighted shortest job first for epic level, because here you can calculate cost of delay and job duration, job size based on your flow time distribution. Again, cost of delay calculation is a bit vague because it's not so easy, and I don't want to go to details right now. What I can say is I've tried to apply cost of delay VSGF on initiative level, project level, and I miserably failed just because projects differ from their context. They can be small, large, medium, and the range, and also they might be research project, that might be development project, that can be almost everything. And you cannot correlate lead time distribution for cost of delay calculation on this level, okay? And finally, for Kano model, famous Kano model, for feature prioritization, it works pretty well because you are concentrating all aspects from the market when prioritizing your features. And again, all these are reflected here when tickets are moved from input to selected column. So selected is limited. And this is the driver. So here's how we enable pull system and replenishment signals. Selected column, as I mentioned, is limited with minimum number of tickets. And you already know this from our team example, when we had this waiting for dev column limited. The same concept applies for other layers as well. And when you have these limits, you can enable real pull system with replenishment signals. Particularly in this example, if you move ticket to in progress, you have minimum limit of free. So you should always have free tickets here, for example. Then it is triggering a signal, replenishment signal here for product owners, BAs, whoever is doing this, doesn't matter, to refill, move one story from here to here. And it's being done just in time. You don't need long meetings, sprint plannings, etc. on this maturity level. You can do it right away. And again, free amigos technique can work for this pretty well based on my experience. Let's look at this. If you don't have any user stories in your input or backlog, this might happen because some feature was stuck here and was not decomposed, right? This replenishment signal goes up one level higher and it triggers a pull from this item to be moved to next so that the decomposed items appear automatically on your stories board. And also when this one is moved, there is another one moved from selected features to analysis, triggering replenishment signal to input queue to move more items from here to here. And the same happens here, just in time replenishment. And I don't want to repeat, but this goes way till OKR level, till initiative level. So this is the true pull system using replenishment signals. And in terms of organizational design, there is a great work done by Jeff Anderson. I would highly recommend to look at this and read his book about agile organizational design. You can have many teams and departments in your organization. It's not about IT or delivery that I have visualized. You have HR, finance, support, shared teams, feature teams, platform teams, shared services teams, and so on and so forth, right? And the real view of such scale, like I've described in this example, is something similar to this, such as you will have your key results decomposed to multiple projects, each project, multiple initiatives grouped within programs, and each program will have its own board. Then you will have underneath epics features, and this feature can be done by multiple teams. So you might have 5, 6, 10 teams, hence 5, 6, 10 boards for each team. And this is something real and realistic. So here I just gave a linear example, but don't be frustrated and don't be afraid if you have something like this. I have seen this and I've worked with this and I'm working with this, and it's not scary. It's easy. If you automate and enable pull system. In terms of dependency management and escalating tactics, you need to have visual signals that are going from the low level to high level when and if needed. And now the top thing here is TOC, or theory of constraints. This is widely applied in manufacturing, coming from Goldratt Gold book. If you have read it, it's really amazing. I highly advise it. But here on this concept of large enterprise scale, it's really hard to find constrained team or department or business unit. But you can easily do it if you have visualization of your entire organization flow, like an example that I have shown. And when you have it, your input queues or backlogs within each level are triggering information about the constraint, team, department, business unit, etc. So in this example, where you have 6 teams, these 2 teams seems like are constrained teams within your feature delivery. And you need to look at them to see how you can elevate the constraint and smoothen it or change the constraint if needed. The same applies to features, epics, etc. on each level. And finally, let's talk about services network. This is well defined and described by Camden University, talking about various teams such as feature teams, platform teams, and shared services team. And we have this 3 example here. So we have feature team delivering features, and when they move ticket to in progress, they identify dependency on the platform team, and then when they started, they identify dependency on shared services team. And all of this can be easily managed if you have proper flow metrics or flow enablement within each of these teams. And you have lead time, or how long things are taking there, and when you can expect this to be delivered, and it can be rolled out. Also, dynamic reservation systems from airspace can be used here to reserve any required capacity for further execution. And finally, tooling matters. And if anyone is telling you that it doesn't, I would say it matters in this context and for this kind of scale enterprise visualization, flow management. And what matters here are flow metrics for sure, for each team, each level, custom work topology, capability to define your own work topology from epics, initiatives to stories, execution signals, capability to trigger custom notifications from broad, delayed, aging work items, workflow automation, capability to automate workflow transitions and process policies, and multi-vector prioritization, such as capability to apply various prioritization schemes and define your own multi-vector prioritization scheme. And all these are available. I don't want to name any companies or tools. Again, I'm working with Jira, and I had a problem. I would say none of this is available there. So I've used add-ons to get this enablement and capabilities. But you can use other tools such as PlanView, Kanbanize, and others who are coming with all these plugged in. And again, even if you use any of these tools, you need to think about all the integrations with your Salesforce, ERP, and other tools that you have for financial management, cost management, HR management, etc. Because when you come to a point where you need to integrate all departments and visualize the flow, you might need these integrations. So wait, did we cover business agility? I would say no. Actually, we did. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not going to touch agile people, agile culture, agile leadership, and even some part of strategy, because this is being covered by my colleagues. And today I've covered some piece of agile strategy execution, agile governance, and agile business change in terms of projects, products, service, and programs. So this is all for today. And we can jump to the questions. I'll stop sharing my screen. So I see a question. What add-on do you use for workflow automation? Oh, great question. Let me name add-ons for everything, actually. I'm using Jira Automation. It's called Jira Automation, I guess. Yeah. That tool. Previously, I was using GMC tool, again from Jira, but now I use Jira Automation. It provides all the capabilities that I need. In terms of custom work topology, I use Jira Structure add-on. In terms of execution signals, I use release notifications plugin, and for multi-vector prioritization, I use multiple plugins. For KVHR, separate plugin, for Kano, separate plugin, and others. For flow metrics, I use actionable agile metrics, and yeah, that's all.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Okay, thank you everyone for this, for your interaction, for your question, and thanks to Aram.
Thanks, Nicholas.